some thoughts on Christmas. I would like to turn your attention to the fable of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, for it is from this episode in Genesis that the traditional theology of Christianity emerges. The main theory, handed down by St. Augustine of Hippo, holds that our first parents transgressed against the primordial commandment of Yahweh, the Father, the first person of the Trinity, and thus precipitated the fall of man. My keyboard just came on, sorry. Precipitated the fall of man, corrupting the soul of each individual with the stain of original sin, and thus barring man from entry into paradise. The intercession of the Son, the second person of the Trinity, in the form of Jesus of Nazareth, whom the Greek-speaking Jews of the early Roman Empire styled Christos, or the Anointed One, provides a means for fallen man to redeem himself by yoking his soul to the restorative powers of the Son. Christmas is thus celebrated as the memorialization of the moment of the incarnation of the Son into the world, and the proclamation of the Evangelion, or the good news, that man might redeem himself from the sin of his first parents, and thus secure to himself entry into the kingdom of heaven. As you can imagine, given the trend of some of my prior Christmas presentations, I would like to offer a slightly different and perhaps somewhat challenging reinterpretation of this theological cornerstone to the Christian faith. And to accomplish this, I will once again ask that we turn our attention to that fabled garden lying between the Tigris and the Euphrates. If you recall, Adam and Eve dwelt within the garden in perfect harmony with nature, their bodies eternally nourished by the fruit of the tree of life. Yahweh gave to them but a single injunction, that they eat not of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, warning them that if they ate of the tree, then they would surely die. Enter the serpent, who tempts Eve into disobeying Yahweh, inducing her to eat of the fruit, which she subsequently shares with Adam. And how does the serpent do this? By letting Eve in on a terrible secret. Yet that Yahweh had not been entirely truthful. Eating of the tree would not kill her, the serpent said. Rather, it would open her eyes, and she would be as God, for she would have the knowledge of good and evil. As we know, Eve and Adam eat of the tree, and do they die? No. Instead, they achieve a radical shift of consciousness, suddenly becoming aware of, and indeed embarrassed by, their nakedness. They have attained self-consciousness and the capacity to judge for themselves what is good and what is evil. Determined to solve the problem of their nakedness, they fashion an entirely new thing, never before existing in the world: clothes. They have become knowers. They have become creators, and assumed their rightful role as made in the image of God, individual souls capable of self-reflective thought and purposeful creative action. We all know what follows. Upon eating the fruit, Adam and Eve do experience a kind of death, for their natures have been so thoroughly changed that Eden can no longer contain them, and Yahweh expels them from the garden, placing a cherubim with a fiery sword to guard the entrance, forever prohibiting man from gaining access to the tree of life. Man's life is no longer sustained automatically. Rather, he must now win his life by the sweat of his brow, by his own productive effort. His life is now his own responsibility, and he must act in order to sustain it. Those actions that promote life, he knows as good. Those that lead towards death, he knows as evil. And it falls to each individual son of Adam or daughter of Eve to puzzle out for themselves what is good for their own life and what is evil, each according to his or her own nature, and then to choose to act on their own rational judgment. It is no coincidence, then, let me stop this until she comes back. It is no coincidence, then, that the universal symbol for wisdom, and still the symbol for the medical sciences, even to this day, is the serpent, that galvanizing force that awakened man's mind into self-awareness. So then we must ask ourselves, if the expulsion of our first parents from paradise was really a liberation, if the fall was really an elevation of the consciousness of man, then where does the Christ fit into all of this? Is she okay? Should we go?
She's fine.
If there was no primeval fall tainting the collective essence of our species, then what role does a Redeemer play? I believe the answer to this question lies in a little-known aspect of the crucifixion narrative, wherein, at the moment of Christ's death, the great veil shrouding the Holy of Holies in the Temple of Zion, which took 20 men to part when the high priest would enter, rent itself in two. One should not underestimate the significance of this symbol. For 5 centuries preceding the time of Christ, the temple establishment, the Sadducees, had created a monopoly on the relationship of the main body of Hebrews' relationship with their God. The high priest alone gained admittance to the Holy of Holies, wherein the Shekinah, the Spirit of the Lord, dwelt. Once a year, on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the high priest would enter the Holy of Holies to effect the release of the Jewish people from their sins. 2 goats were sacrificed, one to Yahweh, the other to Azazel, the demon that dwelt in the deserts west of Jerusalem. This scapegoat contained the sins of the people, which the power of Yahweh had removed from his subjects, and upon its devouring by Azazel, the people were released from the sins of their previous year. The Sadducees acquired a great deal of power, and though they allowed the people to make offerings during the other days of the year, the people could only make offerings with animals sold by the Sadducees, and could only make this purchase with money issued by the temple establishment. Thus, in order to sacrifice to Yahweh, the primary way of making contact with any god in the cultures of the ancient world, the Hebrews had to subject themselves to the caprice of the money changers. In the deeds of Jesus of Nazareth, recorded in the Bible, only once does the Prince of Peace lash out in anger, when he drove the money changers from the temple. The rending of the veil signifies the end of the old order, and the resurrection of the Christ signifies the birth, or rather rebirth, of a new order. The Redeemer came not to correct an original sin arising from the emancipation of man from the Garden of Eden, but rather to correct an error in man's self-concept that arose later. For man, in developing his self-awareness, and thus his self-concept, conceived of God, that power that gives rise to and sustains all existence, as something fundamentally external to himself. This alienation of the soul from God caused him to erroneously believe that man could neither know nor enact the good on his own, but required some intermediary to facilitate his experience of the good. This allowed for the rising of a priestly caste that offered restoration of this breach for a price. The coming of the Messiah and the rending of the veil heralds the death of the old self-concept, which excluded God, and the resurrection of a new self-concept, including God as an aspect of one's own self. By this, I mean the realization that no intermediate force is necessary for the individual to commune with the creative force that we call God, that we may discern and enact the good by our own power. At the Council of Nicaea, the bishops resolved that the Son and the Father were homoousia, or of one essence, and that the person of Jesus of Nazareth was diophysite in nature, that is, simultaneously fully divine and fully mortal. The good news that we celebrate at Christmas is the realization that we are as well. This is the meaning of John 1:2, but as many as received him, to him he gave power to become sons of God, and of Luke 17:21, the kingdom of heaven is within you. We are mortal insofar as we are a body of flesh and blood, nerves and sinew, that struts and frets its hour upon the stage of life and is heard no more. But we are divine insofar as we are a creative consciousness, possessed of awareness and imagination, truly such things as dreams are made on, and that this creative consciousness is of one essence with the eternal creative power that brought forth this creation in fiat lux, let there be light. This realization is the alchemy of the soul, the dissolution of the old self-concept and the reconstitution of a new self-concept, containing God within itself, and is expressed by Paul's proclamation, I am crucified with Christ, though I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth through me. It is the realization that, though it falls to us to reason out the knowledge of good and evil for ourselves, and then to act on that knowledge, we can, in our private moments, commune directly with the Holy Spirit that dwells within, and draw from it guidance and strength. Like all other things in life, it falls on our own responsibility to do this, but knowing that we, as free, creative, conscious souls, are not islands unto ourselves, but microcosms made in the image of that great macroscopic Creator, and sharing in the essence of that Creator by virtue of our consciousness, we can hold fast to our faith that we will know how to accept the cup of our circumstances when it is given to us, and that if we learn to listen honestly to our conscience, this divine spark that all men share, and follow it faithfully, that we can live blessed and virtuous lives, and in our moments of greatest moral triumph, feel the dove of the Holy Spirit descend upon our shoulder, and hear a voice, not booming from a cloud, but whispering softly from within us, say, "This is my child, with whom I am well pleased."
Oh, that is so
Yeah,
good.
excellent, Ellis.
Excellent.
Beautiful.
Yeah, sure.
Email, so we
That is so good. So well written.
that
Wow.
was great.
Ellis needs to be awesome
Beautiful.
preacher.